All right, welcome for some more affordable fixed blade content, and Mike finally getting to the bottom of, well, at least his current pile of Cold Steel Lite Series knives with the Roach belly. Now, this is apparently a very old design. You may have seen it on other knives described as skinners that have this blade geometry, but the Roach belly potentially dates back to the 16th century, England and the colonies, so named because that blade shape resembles not the insect, but a particular kind of fish. And spoiler alert, I really like this knife as a utility tool, but also for its martial potential. Let's go ahead and start as we usually do with the sheath. If you've been watching any of my other Cold Steel Lite Series reviews, this is another one-piece polymer that Cold Steel describes as a Securix sheath, which implies this is a glass-filled material. Like, that's a good idea. But this is also an example where there's enough breathing room for that blade that the edge isn't actively rubbing against whatever this is made out of. Drilled out for drainage hole for outdoor use, integrated belt clip that is generous enough for standard size belt, retention hook so it's not going anywhere accidentally. But my two major issues with the sheaths are, well, this clamps very rigidly to my belt in the vertical position, doesn't move with me, potentially gets in my way. So I've had to figure out other ways to carry these, and we'll talk about that later. But the bigger issue by far is how much of the grip sits down inside the sheath for retention and protection. In this case, yeah, about that much, leaving me very little real estate to grab a hold of for positive deployment. That's made worse by the way this belt clip sits rigidly flat up against the side of the exposed grip. So the best I can usually do is just a little bit of an awkward pinch that makes it a struggle and a fumble. And I often am tempted to reshape or remove material to expose more grip to grip. But in this case, I haven't done that because the shape of this grip helps me out a lot here. The curvature and the taper combined give me a very positive pinch for a very positive, consistent deployment. And that's awesome. Let's talk about the friendly end. Now, this is another Lite Series knife with an overmolded polymer grip, partial tang, and yes, we did have a knife in this series fail catastrophically. But I think that was because of a specific flaw in the design of that particular knife that has not repeated in any of the others. So I think this one will be okay. And yes, I've already put it through the impact and durability test. Spoiler alert, it is okay. But the grip, there are certain things I really like about it, and some things I agree might need some improvement. It has a bit of texture, but it is not rubberized at all, so not the most secure grip. But you might be able to reshape it with some texture that could make it grippier. I've certainly seen other people do that. Has a nice taper and curvature, roundness. It's very comfortable in the hand. Nice transition that allows me to get my thumb up on this jimping on the back of the blade. Also can hug up on that, well, kind of choil there at the base of the blade. So yeah, I can do some really close work. We'll talk about that. But the weight of the knife is a surprisingly light 2.7 ounces, 76.5 grams. Not the lightest knife in this series, but it's right up there with some of the lightest knives in this series. So it feels very light in hand. Point of balance is right at the juncture of the grip and the blade. Overall length is 8.5 inches, 21.5 centimeters. Length of grip, okay, it's about 4 inches, 10 centimeters, with obviously some taper. So it starts down here about 3/4 inches. Yes, I'm looking down at my notes to give you the metric as well as the imperial. 3/4 inches, 2 centimeters, up to about 1 1/16 inches, about 2.6 centimeters. And thickness of grip, there's a little bit of swell, but it averages around 15 millimeters. Drilled out for a lanyard, so that's a nice touch. Talk about the blade. Well, before we talk about the blade, let's talk about value for the money. So the first number to throw out at you here is going to be, well, shop around. Prices do flex a lot and frequently. I do not remember what I paid for this knife a couple of years ago, but currently on Amazon, I think it's going for around 26 US dollars. And for that, we talked about the overmolded grip, partial tang, and you're getting another knife with 4116 Krupp stainless steel. And this is another one that is, well, according to my files, somewhere around 60 HRC. Saber ground blade with a secondary bevel. We'll see how it performs in a little bit here. Mirror polish, not the cleanest lines, but yeah, the spine is crisp enough to strike a fire steel on, and there's some nice jimping on the back, as I mentioned. But your blade specifications, you've got a 4.5-inch blade here with that nice belly and swept back keen tip. We'll see what that's useful for. But 4.5 inches long, 11.5 centimeters. The width at the base, the widest point, is 1 1/8, 2.9 centimeters. And the thickness of the steel stock, this is another Lite Series knife that is 2.5 millimeters thick. Let's go ahead and get straight to my, well, performance testing battery, and we'll talk about how it did for me. Bell test, Roach belly. It's towards me. It's a little slippier. Reverse. Lock the thumb. Edge towards me, lock the thumb. Pretty impressive. Straight into the redwood. Okay. It's kind of slippy and I'm not actually sure if that's going to stop my hand from going up on the blade, so I'm going to stop there. Let's try reverse grip with my thumb lock to keep it put. Okay, that's not bad at all. Reverse the blade towards me. Same lock. Definitely wouldn't do it without my thumb over the back of the grip. Roach belly, bamboo. No damage. Nice weather today for some fine carving. And this is a really nice tool for that. Thumb up on the back real nice, even if I'm gripping it this way. Yeah. It's fine work. Nice control. Alright, if I bring it back towards me a little bit. Yeah. Fine shaven. Let's use a little heavier. It's a really tough dry ash branch. But it's curling it pretty effectively. That's a nice bite, even into this harder media. Yeah, that is nice. Now I don't expect it to be very effective at chopping because it's so light, but let's check it out. Little bite. All right, I'm sure it's not designed for this, but let's try a little batoning. Kind of got stuck there for a bit. Did make a pretty clean cut, and I was feeling a lot of unpleasant kickback right there. Edge test. Now this is not the out-of-the-box edge. I've had this knife for a couple of years, bought it during that period in my life when I wasn't outside much at all, working all the time, so this one went to kitchen duty. And for food prep, it's awesome. And that also tends to imply it would be pretty good at game prep as well. It's kind of what it's designed for. No surprises there. But deciding to give it some wider, harder use, cutting up cardboard and packaging, yes, it did a really good job. Took it out in the yard. Well, you've seen the test footage. And where the edge is now, with no refreshing, yeah, probably a little less keen than it was when I started, but I have not resharpened this ever, as far as I can remember. It's a bit toothy, but yeah, still certainly can do the job. How about some cardboard? Yep, great tool for cardboard. So how did it do in the test battery? I'm going to say overall pretty impressive with, well, a couple of shortcomings, starting with the most Marshall test. Stabbing and thrusting first into my Pell, which is multiple layers of thick cardboard backed up by a couple of inches of compressed brown paper bag paper up against my redwood target, and then to test heavier impact, straight into the redwood. I'm testing tip durability, I'm testing penetration and channel into the softer media in those areas. Yeah, it did great, but I'm also testing how it takes linear impact in terms of my grip retention. Does my hand stay put or wander into danger, and any uncomfortable collisions? This is where the results were kind of mixed, depending on grip orientation. Forward grip, edge away from me. Yeah, that rebate cut at the base of the blade does keep my fingers off the edge, but under heavier impact, I was feeling that collision. I could make it more secure by locking my thumb into the jimping, kind of saber grip. Now, if I reverse the edge towards me, all of that went away. This did not feel secure at all, and I absolutely would not recommend you trying it. In the reverse grip, all right, edge facing away from me. Okay, pinky colliding with edge. Yeah, that'll keep my hand from going up onto the blade, and also now I can lock my thumb over the butt of the grip. That works really well. Reversing the edge towards me. Okay, I lose anything this will do to stop my hand because now it's going into soft tissue, but if I keep my thumb locked over the butt of the grip, and this would be the only way I would try it in this grip, it did work, and it did penetrate, and it did create a great channel into the softer media. And yes, while I was over there by the targets, I did try throwing the thing. I would not recommend it. It is not built for it. Not only the shape and design and weight and balance of the knife, but also, you know, potentially fragile partial tang inside a plastic grip. But I managed to pull it off. It did survive, you know, the things I do for science. I would consider that abusive, though. Speaking of abusive, moving on to the bamboo test. Hacking and slashing at a piece of dry bamboo to see if I can induce chip or roll or fragile edge. Yes, did fine. Moving on to some more realistic tests, some fine carving. Yeah, this is a great fine carving tool. I can get a good grip on it in all sorts of different orientations and make really good use out of the curvature of that belly. Going a little bit harder and carving on some branches to shape them or curl them, and I was using dry ash, which is pretty hard. And it was pretty effective at that. I've also done a little delimbing and some other fine tasks out in my forest of backyard. Doesn't have any weight to speak of to chop with. Again, it's really not designed for that. But I did try batoning with it. And no, it's not designed for batoning either. And I would be extra nervous because we are talking about, again, a partial tang inside a plastic grip. And that's gone wrong on me before. But it did survive. Didn't do a great job, but I managed to pull it off. I probably wouldn't repeat it. And I think the knife punished me for trying because I got a really weird kickback impact right there into the bottom of my hand. So anyway, all right, let's go ahead and talk about carry, deployment, and Marshall handling. And we're down to the unflattering waistline view to talk about carry and deployment. As I've mentioned in reviews of knives with this exact same sheath, when I clip it to my belt, doesn't move with me, kind of gets in my way, doesn't let me sit down, and as you can tell, I really like sitting down. So I'll either shove it in my belt or waistband Facone carry style, drop the whole thing in a pocket, or clip it to my pocket like that, which looks kind of weird, but actually works. It moves with me, and it's very accessible. Speaking of accessibility, even though, as I mentioned, a lot of the grip is down inside the sheath, I have enough, and the shape of it allows me to get a hold of it and deploy it very easily, readily, consistently in the forward grip and also, yeah, in the reverse grip. This is where we talk about the driving philosophy of the series based on the wise words of Jorge Prina, that the best Marshall knife for you, not only the one you have on you when you need it, I hope you never need it for that, but perhaps the one that you use the most for the most things, so you're the most familiar with it, more likely to have it on you, and useful for optics, that balance between utility and martial usefulness. If you happen to be going places with people that are uncomfortable with other people having weapons on them, being able to justify your knife as being a tool, not a weapon, and it not looking so much like a weapon, especially when you're wearing it. I've mentioned this, that in my area, when it comes to a fixed blade, I have to open carry it, so optics are important. And I'm going to say when this is down in its sheath, it's not too obtrusive. Now, drawn, you can argue maybe that blade looks kind of scary, but you can also argue that it's a very traditional design for a utility knife, and that's why you have it. If you're one of those people, I know a lot of people who carry one knife as a utility tool, another one as a self-defense knife. Well, that second one is absolutely a weapon, and that could be a problem depending on where you are. But I also have to be aware that in certain cities around me, there might be length restrictions as well for dangerous weapons. And in those cities, this would be an absolute no-go because it's too long. And we will be talking about shorter blades, so stay tuned for that. But what about the martial effectiveness of this one? When speaking of this knife's martial potential, I am immediately reminded of some designs that look very similar, that are purpose-built, deep concealment, close quarters, last-ditch emergency, get-off-me kind of knives. But those knives are not designed to be effective as utility tools, where this one absolutely is. So I feel like, again, I'm getting that balance at best of both worlds. Now, I could improve its martial function, especially in thrusting and stabbing, if I added some more aggressive texture to the grip, filed some grooves in or something like that. I may still do that. But as is from the factory, in the forward grip with the edge facing away from me, either locked with my thumb on the back saber grip, or I could lock my thumb over the scales this way, I can make good use of it as a stabbing tool. And I like the way that tip kind of gets around corners for reverse stabbing, getting around those obstacles and entanglements. Has enough belly that I feel like I can make good use of that close quarters slash. Not necessarily as my primary attack, but to create an opening for something else. And there are some knives that we're going to look at that are purpose designed to maximize that effectiveness. But don't really have any mass to do any kind of snap cutting, just feels like a feather in my hand. Like I said, reversing the edge towards me is an absolute no-go when it comes to stabbing with it, but in an emergency I might again be able to use some of those get off me kind of slashes in the reverse orientation. That's a possibility. Reverse grip. All right, got to get there first. Transition. All right, certainly narrow at the top to my finger twirl, which I don't recommend because it's not very secure. And this is a very light knife, and I find that knives that are either too heavy or too light are easier to fumble doing this. But I feel like it's got good shape, and yeah, that lanyard hole gives me an indexing point for pinch flipping. So that's not too bad. Safety-wise, I would probably do it in two hands. Again, if I change some things about the shape of the grip, I could probably make it better for the kind of transitions that I use more commonly. But when it's in the reverse grip, yes, edge facing away from me, I've got not only the good hooking stab, but I've got a good slash, and it's made stronger by being able to lock my thumb over the butt of the knife. Turning the edge towards me, which gives me more cutting in the stabbing action, but I lose anything on the forward stroke. That, in order to feel secure, I'm going to have to lock my thumb, or, yeah, I'm not even going to try it. don't really have much of a butt sticking out of the bottom of my hand to use for an impact tool, and it has just rounded plastic, so maybe not very effective that way. But again, I think it does have a lot of potential and its similarities to some of those other knives I've talked about. And spoiler alert, something I've got coming towards the top of my to-do list. Stay tuned for a discussion of the K-Bar TDIs. But until then, thank you all so much as always for watching, liking, subscribing, following my journey, putting up with my madness, adding to our conversation. If you have this knife, if you have similar knives, or you have some of those small, deep concealment defensive knives, tell me about those. Make some recommendations. I always appreciate our conversations. And I hope to see you back for, yep, these may be next.